Well, you may not know this, but today is Juneteenth, a day which commemorates the ending of slavery in the United States, or at least when some slaves found out about it. This celebration dates back to 1865, which we should point out was actually 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. There are reminders every day that racism is deeply ingrained in the fabric of the United States of America and has deep, painful roots. The need for healing is quite clear. One group that is focusing on doing that is called Coming to the Table. Its members are comprised of descendants of slaveholders and descendants of slaves. With us in our New York studio, I have two members of the group, Dion Ford, who is a descendant of both a slave and a slave owner, and Elizabeth Sturgis Urena, who is a descendant of what was once the largest slave trading family in the United States. I want to welcome both of you to Arise America. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. I wish I had more time to talk to you because both of you have fascinating family ancestries and history, but let's just get a little taste of it. Dion, I'll start with you. Tell me your family's connection to slavery and the slave owner, the Colonel.
Sure. So when I was 12, I first heard the story of these particular ancestors, my great-great-grandparents. My great-great-grandmother was a slave. Her name is Tempe Burton, and my great-great-grandfather was her master, Colonel Stewart. And that was the first time I learned about them through my grandfather. And many years later, I decided to find out more about that history, and I was able to learn some more about them.
On the other hand, Elizabeth, you descend from a very successful, if you want to use that word, slave-owning family. Tell us a little bit about them.
The family name was DeWolf, and they operated out of Bristol, Rhode Island. I'm descended on my paternal grandmother's side from the sister of James DeWolf. And I found out about this history in the early 90s when my cousin Katrina Brown decided to pull together as many descendants as she could find and do a healing journey that culminated in a film called Traces of the Trade.
And I'm just curious, when you found out about this, you know, that not only your ancestry, but how successful they were in such a, many would call despicable industry, how did that hit you? What was your reaction?
My first reaction was I didn't want to be associated with these people, you know, even though it was my family. It took me a really long time to own it, to say we, you know, instead of them. I grew up in Bristol, Rhode Island, where the DeWolfs operated out of, and the entire economy of the town was dependent on the slave trade, and I didn't know anything about this history. It wasn't taught in school. You know, I did not hear it from my family. I learned about slavery as a Southern thing and racism as a Southern thing. So it was very hard to take ownership of that.
I would imagine so. Tell me a little bit about your emotions, Dion. As I understand, there's a particular picture, and I don't know if we have it, of your great-grandmother, who's clearly a black woman, and then her slave owner, the Colonel, clearly a white man, behind her with his wife. There's that picture. When you saw that, particularly for those first times, what kind of emotion did that elicit?
Honestly, it was astonishing to me, and it was hard to take in. I have to say, I found this picture several times before I was actually able to do anything about it and start researching it. It just seemed, so even though I knew it was the truth of our history, the picture itself, that they would be in a picture together posing like this, was just really perplexing to me. I couldn't understand why she would want to be in a picture with people who had owned her. So, you know, while on the one hand it's very affirming to have something that is of her, you know, because she's who I was really looking for, Tempe Burton, it was also really confusing how she would be in a picture that really looks like a family portrait.
I wonder from both of you if you carry or maybe even wrestle with any residual emotion. For you, Dion, I would only imagine then with this information, did you ever at any point wrestle with anger? And you already talked about the shame, but is that something that, you know, you bring to the present with you, with this knowledge?
Absolutely. I mean, I was originally so just excited to start finding information, you know, and to just learn anything about my great-great-grandmother and her family. But I did come into contact with the descendants of the family that had owned her. And again, initially I was just so thrilled because they had information, and when you're descended from slaves, that's the thing you're lacking. There's no documents. So I needed them to find out information about her, who her mother was, et cetera, anything like that, if they might have that information. And so originally I was really excited, but as we began to work together, and I have to say, they were so generous with sharing their information, and it was really wonderful. But, you know, a lot of anger that I didn't even realize that I had did start to surface. Just, you know, that, you know, my great-great-grandmother was listed in their wills as their property.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
I could
painful.
see the conflict. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see the conflict. And Elizabeth, we were talking a little bit before we started this conversation about a really interesting point that you made with our producer, that in many ways most white folk have the privilege of not thinking about some of the baggage of ethnicity in this country. Express that a little bit more.
I guess I hear a lot of white people saying when I have these conversations that, for example, they've never been affected by racism. They don't think about it, and it's very easy when you grow up here and you can identify as white for that to be the case. But the fact is that that's part of the privilege. You know, my not having to think about being white every day is in direct correlation to you having to think about being black every day for a myriad different reasons, and it's very stressful. I think the pay or the trade-off is, you know, when we are complicit in these unequal systems, which we are as people who have white skin privilege, then we lose our humanity. You know, we lose our humanity. And I have this extreme family history, but I believe that there is such a thing as the lighter your skin is, the easier many things are.
Yeah, I think you're
in
absolutely
life.
right. And it's just unfathomable to me to not think about ethnicity. It's just a part of, you know, people of color, what we do every day. Let's talk about moving forward and some of the solutions, which is what Coming to the Table is all about. Tell me about the organization and what you do.
Sure. So Coming to the Table is not only descended from, comprised of descendants of slaveholders and the enslaved, other people as well, but that was kind of how it got its start. And really our aim is to acknowledge this history that our country was built on, slavery, and also try to heal from this historic harm that we have. So a big part of that is in research for a lot of us, just kind of reclaiming that lost history of ours.
If someone wants more information about Coming to the Table, perhaps to become involved, quickly tell us how they can do that.
There's a website that has a lot of information. There's videos. There's all kinds of resources.
It's
there
comingtothetable.org.
Comingtothetable.org. Dion, Elizabeth, thank you both. What fascinating histories. Thank you for coming to tell your story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And you're watching Arise America.